The human body is adjusted to the particular states of Earth, including its gravity, barometrical creation, and temperature range. If people somehow happen to go to various planets or heavenly bodies in our planetary group or past, a few variables would fundamentally affect the human body. Gravity. Planets have different gravitational powers. For instance, Mars has just around 38% of Earth's gravity, while the Moon has quite recently 16%. Expanded periods spent in low-gravity conditions can prompt muscle and bone misfortune, cardiovascular changes, and other physiological impacts. Environment. The structure of a planet's climate is pivotal. Earth's environment is dominatingly made out of nitrogen and oxygen, which is fundamental for human breath. Different planets might have environments with various organizations. For example, Mars, which has a slight air fundamentally made out of carbon dioxide. People would require life emotionally supportive networks or defensive stuff to make do in such conditions. Temperature and environment. Various planets have differing temperature ranges. For instance, Mercury encounters outrageous temperature variances, with oppressive intensity during the day and freezing cold around evening time. Interestingly, Venus has a thick air that establishes a singing hot climate. People would require legitimate warm guideline components or defensive suits to make do in such circumstances. Radiation, space, and a few planetary conditions are presented to elevated degrees of radiation, including inestimable beams and sun-powered radiation. Delayed openness to such radiation can be destructive to the human body and increment the gamble of disease and other medical problems. Defensive protecting and precautionary measures would be fundamental. Assets. Planetary conditions might miss the mark on assets like water, oxygen, and food. People would have to lay out self-supporting frameworks or convey supplies from Earth to help their essential requirements. If people somehow happen to travel and colonize different planets or heavenly bodies, critical mechanical headways and transformations would be important to guarantee the endurance and prosperity of the human body in those conditions. The human body is explicitly adjusted to the circumstances on the planet, and it would confront huge difficulties in making do on different planets without the fundamental emotionally supportive networks set up. Here's a concise outline of what the human body would be meant for on a few distinct planets in our planetary group. Mars. Mars has a slight climate, low environmental tension, and outrageous cold temperatures. The absence of a significant climate implies that people would be presented to elevated degrees of radiation from the sun and grandiose beams. The low environmental tension would likewise make liquids in the human body bubble at lower temperatures, making it hard for people to get by without compressed suits and life emotionally supportive networks. Venus. Venus has an incredibly thick and harmful air made generally out of carbon dioxide. The surface temperature is adequately hot to soften lead, and the barometrical tension is multiple times that of Earth. The climate on Venus is cold to human existence, with an out-of-control nursery impact causing a thick layer of sulfuric corrosive mists and temperatures surpassing 900 degrees Fahrenheit, 475 degrees Celsius. Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter and Saturn are gas monsters made basically out of hydrogen and helium. These planets have no strong surfaces, and their climates are profoundly tempestuous with solid breezes, extreme attractive fields, and elevated degrees of radiation. The outrageous circumstances on these gas monsters would make them appalling for people. Moon and different moons in the nearby planet group. The Moon comes up short on climate and has outrageous temperature varieties. Different moons in the nearby planet group, like Europa, a moon of Jupiter, or Titan, a moon of Saturn, have their own novel natural difficulties, like outrageous cold, absence of breathable air, or the presence of fluid methane lakes. These circumstances would require particular hardware and framework for human residence. To empower human endurance on different planets or moons, broad preparation, designing, and innovation would be important to give life emotionally supportive networks, assurance from radiation, temperature guideline, and the resources to support food, water, and breathable air.